when you go for an interview like in the UK, like you wear a suit. Everyone wears a suit for an interview. So like I didn't even think. I just walked into this office. You imagine all these guys in their jeans and t-shirts and flip-flops, looked around. They thought I was coming like to like buy the company or something. They're like, whoa, who's this guy? It's very important.
I'm trying to understand why you actually moved here in the first place. Was it to do with the increase in salary? Or was it to do with the job specific, or you saw the potential?
I will mention that windowless office again. I was literally in a little cubicle for 2 years. Like my vitamin D levels were like shot. They were all earning double what I'm earning. I'm like, this company, right? I can be doing the same thing for a different company and earning like twice as much money. Like that sounds amazing.
You've been here 10 years. Let's talk through some of the challenges you face.
This is how you're going to make money, by selling our product. You can sell license X, Y, and Z if you manage to sell this.
Welcome to a new episode of Talk with the Scot. I'm here with Vig Book, who is Director of Product Marketing at Tufin. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Thank you very much for taking the time to sit with me.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And an extra special thanks because we're sitting on a Thursday, and I know Thursdays usually a work from home day, and you're running a marathon tomorrow.
I am indeed.
So you've got your electrolytes there, and we will definitely talk a little bit about running and the benefits that it brings to you in a professional sense, but we'll do that a bit later on. So whenever I am speaking with people on the podcast, I ask them the first question, which is, when it comes to management, what characteristics, what traits should somebody have?
Well, it's a good question. So just to clarify, right now I'm a manager like of myself. I don't actually manage a team, but I do manage the product marketing at Tufin currently. So traits are, of course, especially in the world of marketing, is to be adaptable. Like it's a super fast-changing world, and so Tufin is a cybersecurity company. So just by the nature of cybersecurity, like it's constantly evolving and changing. So you have to be adaptable. You basically can't have an ego, or as little as ego as possible. We all have egos, but you really got to like suppress that, because we might be working on like large projects, and more often than not, we're going to get a message from like management, the board, or a customer request, whatever it might be, and it might be like, and it's urgent, because it's constantly a right prioritization, and just being able to manage your time, which is easier said than done, especially like if you're working on a large project and you might have like urgent requests at that project. We're like, I'm one person. Okay, so what do? Do I just let the project go? Do I outsource it to someone? It's really a case of like basic prioritization, which is kind of what I said.
Okay, your path into sort of marketing, product marketing, is definitely not a traditional route. So if I'm right in saying so, you are a qualified engineer.
Mechanical engineer.
Okay. You moved to Israel like at the age of 24, so like what, 25 years ago?
Pretty much.
We're getting on.
We are.
And you pretty much went into the world of training, staff training.
Pretty much, yeah. So I moved in, as you said, September 2000, and so when you move to Israel at that age, you are most likely going to receive a letter from the army asking you for like for a call-up, conscription papers, which I did. Like a few weeks after, I got a conscription call-up. So during those first few weeks, I was learning Hebrew, and so it was a pretty light schedule. Just had a few hours in the morning. So I went across to the conscription center, and they looked at my age and were like, I'm over the hill. I mean, now I'm 48 and I feel like I'm over the hill, but even then they were like, I don't know, we don't really have anything for you, but you're an engineer, that's quite interesting. Why don't you go and, if we have something for you, you're going to need to basically transcribe all of your university papers into Hebrew and become a fellow of the Institute of Israeli Engineers. I'm like, fine, I'll do that. It was a bit of a hassle, but imagine this was in 2000. So like email and all that stuff was kind of pretty slow. So
fax.
It was all done by snail mail. There was actually a fax involved, yes, with that greasy paper you forget anyway. And in the meantime, I carried on like learning Hebrew. I mean, not that it's improved much since then, but and also I was started to kind of like just look at the job market, where I just freshly finished university, and I was just curious to see what was out there. So around December time, I saw that there was a company, they're still in, called Simmons, actually they're still around, and I saw that they were looking for like a training writer. Bear in mind, I'd never been employed like in my field yet. Okay, and I'm like, oh, I'll go for that. Sounds cool to do that. They were in computer-aided design and manufacture, CAD/CAM, which is what I specialised in. So I sent the CV off. Within 24 hours, they called me back. Can you come in? We're desperately looking for someone. There was meant to be someone coming back from maternity leave. Decided that they just didn't want to come back. They wanted to spend time with their baby at home, and we need someone like to help us like writing like tutorials. Like they were called online tutorials, which is funny because they weren't really online. They were something that we wrote and then they just put them within the product. There was no online really in those days. Anyhow, so I went over for the interview, and bear in mind I just moved to Israel, and I will say a very embarrassing story right now. And like when you go for an interview like in the UK, like you wear a suit. Everyone like wears a suit to an interview. So like I didn't even think. I just walked into this office. You imagine all these guys in their jeans and t-shirts and flip-flops looked around me. They thought I was coming like to like buy the company or something. So I was like, whoa, who's this guy? It was very important. Little did they know I was going for like a pretty junior role. So for the next 4 years in that company, every single day they were like, Viggy, where's your suit? And yes, I got royally...
Oh, you went with a shirt and tie?
Oh, it was awful. Yes, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I mean, now look at me now. I mean, like, you know, this is how I dress for work. So it was funny, and rightly so. People poke fun of me for every day for 4 years, pretty much. Well,
it's a funny story.
Yeah.
But it's actually, you know, we can talk about being a new immigrant or like new into a new work environment.
Yeah.
Everything's a learning curve.
Yeah, of course.
And that's one you don't forget.
On a mental note, don't wear a suit.
Don't wear a suit.
Unless you're going for the CEO job, maybe. But even then, it would be pretty good. Anyway, so I started off basically in a very tiny windowless office with my manager at the time, and I was kind of familiar with the technology, which was good. As I mentioned, for universities, I didn't really. The learning curve in terms of like the technology was pretty straightforward. Okay, but I just had to kind of like write guides for like how to use different parts of like the software, enabled you to machine things in different ways. And fast forward 2 years, I'd been doing it for 2 years. I mean, you know, at that time I thought I was making a pretty nice salary, and someone became sick in the support team, right? So the support team were in charge of actually delivering training. So this is where there was the first switch of actually meeting a customer or a partner that I'd never had until then. Before now, I just kind of really had no, I forgot the word, I had no exposure, that's the word, right, to anyone outside of basically the few people I was working with. And so they were frantically looking for someone, but it was happening the next week in Germany, and they were like, God, who speaks like relatively good English here? I can just quickly go. Who knows like the product? I've been training it for like 2 years. I'm like, me? And they were like, looked at me a bit skeptical. They're like, fine, just come on. We need a second person. Like, there was actually me and another person to like go to some customer site in Germany, and off I went. And
you'd never had face-to-face?
I'd never met a customer, I'd never done any customer facing, I'd never done any delivery of the training. All I'd ever done was like writing. And so off I went, and I ended up kind of just doing it all myself. And the support guy who was with me, who was meant to be like the head kind of trainer there, was like, wow, he's pretty good actually. I was like, because to bear in mind, I had been writing it for 2 years. The knowledge wasn't new, just I never actually had to deliver. And I found delivering it was like much easier than actually writing it.
So it's interesting you say that, because lots of people, especially writers, they enjoy sitting in their office, they're creative, so they'll write whatever material they need to write, but the thought of standing up and presenting it gives them the fear of death, and it's so out of their comfort zone. But you're saying the exact opposite. You enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, I will mention that windowless office again. I was literally in a little cubicle for 2 years. Like my vitamin D levels were like shot, and it was a chance to travel somewhere. Like I didn't even working in like the workforce for 2 years, and all of a sudden I get the chance to like go on an airplane and go to a different country. I was a little bit naive at the time. I just like went through and I realized I was like, not only am I training the customer, I'm actually hearing what the customer's saying as well. I'm getting feedback. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Now I know what they think of what all the stuff being written. Until again, we were in 2002. Like there was no Survey Monkey. The feedback, maybe there was some handwritten stuff here and there, but it wasn't really real time. We weren't measured at all by any metrics. KPIs pretty much didn't exist in those days. Obviously nowadays, like everything I do is measured, of course. But in those days, there was no such thing. So I was listening to their feedback and I was getting ideas, not just like, feedback about what they'd just been learning, but also like, oh, maybe we could add that module, or it'd be interesting to learn more about that, etc., etc. So, and that was it. For the next 2 years, I ended up traveling like all over the place. I went to Taiwan a couple of times, which was the weirdest place I went with that company, but it was very cool. And Europe, and a few places in the States. And at some point, I don't know if you want to carry on my journey.
I actually want to ask you. We'll come back to the next step of your career.
Good. All right.
But what did you learn? Like, what skills or the learning and development then have you brought into your current position now?
So, the easiest answer is to be able to like explain things in a way that the customer would understand. Often, the way that training works is you sit with R&D. If you're lucky, maybe you'll sit with QA. So you're sitting with very technical people. So they're telling you the information on how the product works, right? And then you've basically got to like convert that into a format where a customer, or possibly even a prospect, imagine it. So you even go further away from a customer, has to be able to like pick that up and able to understand not just what the product does, but why it's doing what it's doing and how it's going to solve their problems. Okay, I've really maybe embellished it. I don't know if I was thinking that at the time, but those skills definitely came through because I realized the people using it, especially as I started training the people, and I could see that they were reading the materials that I was writing. I was like, okay, they actually have to like comprehend how to use the software. And that was basically the job.
Okay.
Hopefully that explains it.
Yeah. Okay, so you realised you enjoyed the face-to-face, getting out, explaining it, teaching, training, more than sitting in your windowless office.
Yes.
So your next step, that's when you really moved into a more formal training position.
So after like 4 years of being there, I kind of was looking at I did mention the salary at the beginning because that's one of the reasons I left. I was like, this company was like blue collar. It wasn't actually high tech. It still isn't considered high tech. And I was asking friends of mine at the time, I've been in this for 4 years already, who are kind of like high tech, not developers. Developers are always, traditionally, it's much higher salary. I was like, what type of salaries are they on, and like kind of roughly how much they're earning. They were all earning double what I'm earning. I'm like, this can't be right. I could be doing the same thing for a different company and earning like twice as much money. I'm like, that sounds amazing. This is an interesting story. I actually applied to a company called Nice, where I did end up working a couple of years later, but at the time I went for the interview, and in the middle of the interview they were like, how's your French? Which was not on the job description. I'm like, first I made the kind of joke, comme ci, comme ça, whatever, and they were like, do you speak French? I'm like, no, I do not speak French. Even though I've done it for 5 years in school, of course, but like my level of French was like I couldn't deliver training it. And they were like, oh, okay, then, well, maybe this isn't so relevant. I'm like, why did you not just ask me that at the beginning of the course? So that was a bit strange, but like the actual job description, everything I could do was fantastic. And I really liked the vibe of the company. I'm like, I'm going to come back to this company one day, which I did, and I'll come back to that. So very quickly, I started looking around, found another job in a company, which has funny technology these days. They did IPTV. Can you believe it? You can actually watch the TV through your internet. But this was in 2000 and... What did I say started working?
2005, 2006.
Yeah. You should imagine in those days, the internet barely existed. It was a little bit more than Hotmail, but it was still pretty rubbish. And they were like, yeah, we could use this and we could use the internet to put the picture on the TV. That's like the mindset at the time. Obviously nowadays, they went bankrupt after that company. It completely don't exist anymore. Yeah. And they had, so this was cool. It was a small company, like 40, 50 people, a startup essentially. And all privately funded, and I was like, almost like, I don't know what the word in English is here, I was like the cold bunny. I was like a jack of all trades. Yeah. Yes, a jack of all trades. So I was the training manager, but I did sales training for the first time. I never did sales training before. I did customer training, did partner training. I helped like in support. Because it's a small company, I managed to kind of like see lots of different areas of the company. I ended up working with everyone. It was a very nice environment. Startups are a very nice environment. They're very personal, and you get to know everyone at the same time together. It's a bit more like a family environment, and I really, really enjoyed it. Skipped forward 2 years, and I reapplied back to Nice for it. And another job opening at Nice, very similar to what. So obviously the first thing I did was, is this an English-only speaking position? Are you going to ask for different? And it was the same guy. He was like, no, this is in English, and we want you to come back. Well, and then I got a job right there. And I was like, yes. So my persistence paid off. Right? Yeah. And Nice still exists, huge Israeli and worldwide powerhouse. It's like every time I see people that are working there for 20 years. In fact, just the other week on LinkedIn, I saw some guy had left Nice, and it's the only job he ever had. He retired. That's crazy. He'd worked there for over 30 years. and you retired after having one job.
You keep dropping in things
Yeah.
that are really, I think, really important, and we should try and just dive in a little bit deeper to them. So you just talked before about startup versus, and obviously this is more, I mean, it's not corporate as such, but Tufin is 500 people in Israel, I think in the US as well, maybe elsewhere.
Yeah.
What's having experienced startup culture and a more growing, developed company? What are the main differences as far as you're concerned?
Well, I've been in Tufin for almost 9 years, almost my 9-year anniversary. So when I joined Tufin, it wasn't like this. It was a private. I wouldn't say it's a startup, but it was still fairly big in those days, maybe a couple of hundred people.
And it's now 500 or something.
Yeah, but we've been through like the journey of everything, like the whole company. So as I said, private. Eventually, we floated on the Nasdaq, and then after a couple of years, that was on a massive high. And then we got acquired by a private equity firm, still owned by a private equity firm. And so I kind of seen lots of ups and downs. We've had, a reduction in force, is I think the right way to say it, a couple of times. And right now we're, the only profitable company in our space. Good plug for Tufin there. And so the difference is, of course, I mean, I'm not going to say something which is so mind-blowing here. Like when you're working for a startup, it's the risk. It's very high risk. They're working on this software. Look at this company, IPTV. Like it was a great idea at the time, and just they were like way ahead of their time, like super ahead. And they had a product which actually worked. I used to go and train it, and we used to take this set-top box with us on the airplane, and had all this equipment, and it was we could see like a channel via the internet. It was very cool for the time. Obviously nowadays it's completely irrelevant, but they're just too far ahead of their time. And eventually they did get bought up by another company. They merged with someone else. So yeah, very high risk, super friendly atmosphere, and I'm still in contact with a lot of people from that 2 years. It's probably the nicest people I met. Everyone's just much more warmy, but you kind of like going into an atmosphere where you're being owned by like private equity, and you've got to perform. And the second that your numbers that you're not selling enough and your numbers go down, I mean that's it. Again, that's how a lot of successful companies start. If you're successful, then that risk pays off.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about KPIs.
Yeah. I mean, look at Tufin. Tufin was a startup, and look at us now. We're like in this corporate building in Tel Aviv.
So we're going to talk about KPIs a bit later. Yeah. So nice people at Nice.
Oh, and at Nice.
And then, but how did you then? Nice to hear. Yeah. Nice over to Tufin.
It wasn't directly, actually.
That wasn't direct?
It wasn't actually direct. The job at Tufin was also, I didn't tell you this story, right? So I worked at Nice for 7 years. It was really a brilliant time, but it wasn't startup, that was proper corporate, it was bigger than Tufin, it is bigger. I really enjoyed my time there, and I kind of grew to like a lead training role there. I managed like a team of like trainers in Europe. So definitely I became more senior, still in the world of training.
Who did you report into at Nice?
He's the head of training. I'm talking about someone at Nice, yeah. I mean, people just stay there. You'll never want to leave. So I left for like a very weird reason, actually. They moved offices, and they moved so far away from their home, and that was probably pre-COVID, way before COVID, right? And it was taking me like almost an hour and a half each way, and there was no public transport. I had to drive. This was like 3 hours on the road every single day, like 15 hours a week. Wow, can you imagine that now when we're working from home and we have this whole hybrid culture? Crazy. And even then it was like, I can't do this anymore. It's like killing me, because if I was on the train or something, I could maybe work. I couldn't even work. I was just kind of sitting there in the car, in the traffic for like hours on end.
Just talking about the person you were reporting into.
Yeah.
Why, like, that person obviously had an influence in terms of you staying there for such a long period of time.
Yeah, of course.
Why? And what made that person like just a great person?
I would say he was and still is like he's maybe it's like a British thing, but like he's just a solid individual. He's dependable. I could look to him and know exactly, what my priorities were or tasks were, and I could trust him. And there was transparency. All these words, they're not just nice to have words. These are like must-have words. If there's any kind of like doubt or lack of trust between you and your boss, that is like a major part. And this guy I'm still in contact with him, and he taught me like skills as well, training. He's like very now. I'm not sure what his title is now. He's still in the world of training, but super senior, lots of experience, and I really picked it up a lot from him. Anyway, so company moved. I couldn't bear the traffic. That's a much better way of saying it. And I just moved to a company in Rehovot, which is very close to where I live. And as I went back to my roots a little bit, they are a 3D printing company called Stratasys.
Yeah.
And I rode my bike to work and back. Yeah, I even ran there a couple of times. It's really not. It's only 30k. And so that was great. I really loved it. And I was actually fine there. I get there. The actual department was pretty small. There, I did actually mainly sales training. So that was also interesting. I've never done mainly sales training, so kind of a whole skill. And I worked with someone with an outsourced person who specialised in training sales reps. So even though he didn't work for Stratasys, he still taught me a ton. Good experience. I was very happy there. It was close to home. I could even like driving, about 20-minute drive. Everything was fine. And then I got a call from a friend of mine saying, "You know this company called Tufin?" And I'm like, "Who? Never heard of it." And even now, like, it's not like a kind of like front-facing company. Like the technology is like super important and do amazing work, but it's more sitting like in the data center at the back end. It's not like the kind of company you might hear like Microsoft or whatever. So I'm like, nope, I've never heard of them. I said, well, the training manager has just left. This is an amazing opportunity. I know the CEO. You should meet with him. It's definitely worth your experience. I'm like, I wasn't looking. So this is a new one for me. I'm like completely not looking. And I was about to travel to do a training somewhere for Stratasys. I'm like, so you can meet you on Monday. I'm like, fine, I'm flying on Monday afternoon. So it was really cool actually. I came to the office with my trolley, and I'm about to get on a plane, looking really important and everything. I was not wearing a suit.
I was going to ask, don't wear a suit.
No, this time I wore a bow tie, no suit, nothing. He basically thought of me. He was a CEO at the time, and he thought to me, listen, what title do you want? I don't know, head of training, whatever. He said, what salary are you looking for? I'm like, so I just put like a ridiculous figure up. Yeah, we can do that. I'm like, okay.
You should have asked for one.
I know, I'm like, damn it. Exactly what happened by the way. When I came back and mentioned to my wife, she was like, oh, you're such an idiot. Anyway, I didn't know. Anyway, I was so naive. And then, and he was like, oh yeah, and obviously, I didn't think about it. He said, obviously, you're going to get options in the company as well. Obviously, what we're planning to kind of like go public one day. I didn't know options were. I'm like, okay, thanks very much, being honest with you. And that's it, started a Tufin, just like that. And managing the whole array of trainings. Again, like you mentioned, customer, partner, and sales. And it was crazy. I don't know how many of your listeners are going to be like the world of training. They had nothing. They had no LMS, learning management system. And after 2 weeks after being there, they're like, okay, you're going to our office in Ohio. One of our engineers is delivering a training to partners. It's really important that you go. So I went, and he didn't even have a PowerPoint. It was literally training it on the software. There was like no formal training. And so I sat there a few days, I learned stuff, and or as much as I could because I was still fairly new. No exam, no certification, no anything. I'm like, so how do you know that the person's like learned anything? Type of thing. I had some experience, and that's what they brought me on. And so I came back to Israel, and he was like, how was it? I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like it was a real eye opener. Said I know I've got lots of plans. I want to do this, and this. He goes, forget all that for now. We're having a sales training in a month. You need to develop some sales training. I'm like, so what?
So were you reporting directly to the CEO?
At the time, yeah. Oh, because the person behind me, very, very minor story, I was going to be working VP services. After a week after I joined, he decided to leave. So I reported directly to the CEO.
Nothing to do with you?
Well, I was only there for a week, I hope not. I'm pretty sure I showered in that week. Anyway, but so I went to the CEO, and that was amazing. That was a gift. This is not a given and extremely unusual to report that as a training manager. What doesn't happen. But I really lucked out. He said, you need to like what you need. I went, I need an LMS. People need to be able to sign on to a digital learning system. I tried to explain to him what it was. Be able to take certification, pass exams, and you can charge for the courses. And he was like, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe we'll start charging for courses. Like, there was no training. And all of a sudden, he's like starting to like work out a way to kind of like monetize training.
So, taking a step back, was it, I'm trying to understand why you actually moved here in the first place. Was it to do with the increase in salary? Or was it to do with the job specific, or you saw the potential?
Well, I don't know if you can believe me, but it was the potential. Like, after speaking to the CEO, and he was very, very, not just persuasive, he was also kind of like, he was visionary, that's what I was looking for. Like, he really had this vision, and like I was looking at that.
So you got into the vision, which I think is really important, because I've been talking to a few other people. When somebody goes for an interview, going back in the old days, it was very much, you go for an interview and they're assessing that individual, that candidate, if they are suitable to come and work for the hiring company. Whereas I think in more recent years, it's not just about the candidate selling themselves, it's got to be about the company selling the company to the person. So you're saying, 10 years ago or so, you sat down with the CEO and he really sold you the company and the values and the vision, and you bought into that.
And he knew that I was coming without having applied for the job. So he really, I guess maybe I sent a CV, I don't even remember. And the fact that he was so open and free, like he was like, just let me know. And I even said, like, I'd like to have a director title one day. And he was like, yeah, don't worry, that will happen. I promise you that'll happen. And I'm like, well, this is, all my, all career aspirations, tick every single box.
For anybody that's watching this, that's maybe in a similar situation to what you were in, and they're thinking about, jumping the ship, handing their notice in, how did you deal with that? Because obviously, you were comfortable where you were enjoying what you were doing, were you sitting there doubting, I'm going to let them down, but...
That is a good question. I'm going to go back to what I was thinking at the time. So, in a way, that place I was pretty sad to leave. Like, I had lots of things going for it, but obviously I have to weigh up all the pros and cons. It's like any job. It's like, this person is offering me like huge career progression, as well as like the financial incentives, also like the job itself. The company was ready 200 and growing. Like, I was part of my onboarding, like 25 people in my onboarding. It was like just growing at an exponential rate at the time, and it was like a huge buzz in the company. I remember when I came in just for the interview, you could just tell like it was alive. I'd never been in cybersecurity before, so this is like the first, look into like a whole kind of new world. I imagine 10 years ago it was really amazing.
Yeah.
And it was like pretty much on fire, and I just thought, wow, the pros outweighed the cons. True, I didn't know anyone. Actually, didn't know one person. I knew Mark Wellens. He used to work for Tufin. You might know, right?
He's a big Glasgow boy.
Indeed, yes. So he actually second interview when I came back, he was like, "Oh, I'm pouring you a whiskey." I'm like, "Oh, does this get any better?" It's like, seriously, wow, I'm getting everything I could possibly wish for. He was a little bit of a pull actually, and also there was a person who used to work at NICE who worked for Tufin. So there were a few connections. And that's not but I'm like I could definitely give it a go. Correct. I've been in Silicon Valley for 2 years, but it was just too much of a pull. So sad as it was, as I mentioned before, and I went, traveled to like Ohio, of all places, came back, said we need a sales training. I'm like, so what do you have? Like nothing. What do you mean? Like, how can what do you want to train them on? Like, what's the goal of the training? Okay, we need to train our salespeople to sell the product. I'm like, okay, so what do you have? Literally nothing, like a blank piece of paper. Okay, and the LMS hadn't really come yet. I'm like, I'm just going to build a PowerPoint. He's like, okay. So I built a PowerPoint, and I probably still have it somewhere. Looking back on it, it was so ridiculous. It was like, literally, this is our product. This is, the customer value, and this is how you're going to make money by selling our product. You can sell license X, Y, and Z if you manage to sell this. This is your typical customer. To be honest, that type of thing is kind of now for me like bread and butter, especially in marketing. This is what you're looking for. But in those days, I was learning it all from scratch. I was trying to get inside the head of an alpha person, or a salesperson.
So it sounds like up to this point in your career, it's just been a massive learning curve.
Yeah.
Because you've been willing to some extent, step outside your comfort zone and take a few risks along the way, which I think is important because a lot of people, especially nowadays, like they're in a position, they're comfortable, they're not willing to maybe take that jump, push themselves on.
A lot of it does depend on age. I'm just going to maybe just be a little bit. So I was younger in those days, maybe a little bit more foolish. Like now being here for 9 years, and I'm kind of thinking, would I ever leave? And I kind of think, I don't know, maybe if the opportunity arose, but I'm not definitely not actively seeking to anything. And to be honest, as I'm approaching 50 and a bit more, it does become a little bit more difficult to kind of take the risk. If one day I were to leave, I doubt I would go to a startup. I'd probably more likely go to a more established corporate firm because I wouldn't want to take the financial risk like right now. In those days, I was like, well, if it doesn't work out, just get another job. But I'm glad it did, of course. Yes, you're right. I definitely would take the risk.
Okay. So you've been here 10 years. Let's talk through some of the challenges you faced. Obviously, you outlined one just before, where you came in and there was literally nothing. It's a blank bit of paper. So you didn't have a choice. You had to build the processes and the value adds and be able to stand up in front of a room or a theatre of people and present Tufin and the values, the benefits, the cost benefits, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Talk through some of the other challenges. Maybe it's with moving into a big company like this.
I think one of the biggest challenges was actually the technology. As I mentioned, I've never been in cybersecurity, and also like I remember going to the onboarding, and it was the CEO who introduced all the new employees, and it was a good old days. So people flew from all over the world, and nowadays it will be done on Zoom. I don't think we would have like a onboarding for like a global company like that. But he was teaching me for like what's the I didn't know what firewall was. Like we do firewall management and automation. SD-WAN and SASE and cloud and all that stuff. But at the time, I didn't even know what a firewall was. I was like so clueless. So yeah, it was like a steep learning curve. And obviously, we're managing like multiple firewall vendors simultaneously, and the software is super complex. But I didn't even know like the basics. So it was quite a steep learning curve. That definitely was a challenge. And even today, like I'm still kind of like amazed by like the amount of calculations our software does. Like a click of a button, it still impresses me. And back like 9+ years ago, I was like really felt I was in the deep end for like a long time actually. People always had to explain to me like idiot's guide to kind of like firewalls and like network security, and it took me such a long time to grasp those concepts. And I was meant to be training anything. Like if I don't understand it, how on earth am I going to write anything about it? Yeah. I don't just want to parrot it. I want to make sure that the person is actually understanding it. So, but with Tufin, I was traveling pretty frequently and quickly. So as soon as I started meeting customers and actually understanding their stories, that's when it became a lot easier. It's always easier when you meet customers, especially in that line of work. Yeah. So that was definitely a challenge at the beginning.
So you're going out, you're meeting clients or potential clients. Why would somebody not work with you?
More often than not, like I was getting complaints rather than praise. And I go, why did you do it like that? Or can you do this? Or why didn't you do it that way? And taking things. I mentioned like not to be egoless, but still, when you're getting a lot of flack, we're human beings, and it was quite challenging to keep my cool at times and kind of learn from the feedback. But not all the feedback was constructive. Some of it was downright rude, to be honest. But it was quite challenging. It was new to me, and it was obviously new to them. And the people that had been working Tufin before me were like expecting A, B, C, and I might have done it differently because of my experience and training. I'm like, well, I can give you like really simple examples, like PowerPoint slides. Okay, really simple, pretty bread and butter for training. What do you not want on a PowerPoint slide? Words. You do not want to see a block of text on a PowerPoint slide. But this is what we've always done, and we've always kind of like had. I'm like, yeah, that's why no one's learning anything, because like no one's going to read, and I just give them like a manual.
I think it's the worst reason not to make a change.
Yeah, the way we've always done it. Oh god, it happened so many times. And also, I didn't understand the software enough. So often I felt like a bit, not just I was being attacked, I felt like really stupid. I felt like, maybe I just don't get it. Maybe, I should explain that feature or this solution in a different way so they understand. I don't know, it was
I think some of the things that you've just touched on are very relevant, especially in today's world. We're talking about feedback and constructive criticism, or just downright being rude. Give some examples of the three. The reason why I'm asking you is because
I hope those people don't work at Tufin anymore.
You don't need to name names. But the reason why I'm asking is because certainly in my experience, and I've been like recruiting and managing and scaling teams for like 25 years, and I definitely see in the last few years that people in the workforce have become softer, more gentle in their approach and how they speak. People take offence quicker and far easier than in the past. So, I'm throwing it over to you. I think it's a really interesting discussion.
First of all, I do want to mention, like, a Tufin value, which has always been, since the company was founded, was the number of most corporate companies have, like, their values. Number one, treat people with respect. And it always is a way, and it's, like, ingrained in us. So I say, those people were rude. It's like, it's not like I went home and, cried myself to sleep. It wasn't, like, rude like that. It was, like, me kind of, like, having my own expectations from all my experience and training, and all of a sudden I was like, it was like crossing a path of like a technology I just didn't understand with all my experience, and I had to kind of work out how to kind of manipulate that or convert it into like a positive outcome. So,
do you think it maybe also has something to cultural differences?
Yeah, even though I've been here for like forever,
Yeah.
obviously like I'm dreaming and thinking in English and speaking English like the whole time. So yeah, I agree. That definitely is a thing. And so, you know, they might be like saying, "Why didn't you do it like that?" It's like, okay, it's, the intonation to me is like, "Whoa, steady on there." But like they could just be saying,
Do you want a cup of tea?
yes, maybe you would want to write it like that. I'm like, okay, that sounds like a great idea. But so yeah, sometimes it came across differently. But I really just, I know I said it like once, but like just going back to it, I really felt like it was a steep learning curve into getting like the basics of the technology. And now when like just like this week we have a new person in the marketing team, and I'm his kind of onboarding buddy. So I'm making sure that he has all of the tools necessary to be onboarded the most. There was, forget no training, there was no onboarding. I had zero. I had that one session with the CEO who explained to you what a firewall was. I met a few people, and that was it. I was like, okay, off you go. You can go and run away.
So you really built. Yeah. You wrote your own job description to some extent.
Pretty much, yeah. And so back to your question. I mean, what do you want examples? Because the job was new. There was a training position. There was someone who did the position like a little bit before me. But from what I understand, in his defense, I know the person, he wasn't exactly given the tools necessary to do the job, so he kind of left, and I lucked out that I just came at a slightly different time, and basically pretty much got everything that he wanted, and wasn't at the time, okay? Because obviously, situations changed, and the company really wanted to invest in training. They realized how important training was, and so I guess lucked out in that respect. Yeah, I had my small onboarding session, and then I was like, off you go, and it was kind of like, I was the only person who did it. I didn't have a team yet. I was in the next few years I built like a whole team of people, and which is another nice thing. I've never actually led a team of like a whole training team like on the scale that I did here, which was another nice thing which the CEO promised in the interview. So that's good. I had like proper managerial level and eventually director, and I was kind of left to my own resources. Which kind of works some ways. I was thrown in the deep end, literally, so I really had to kind of like scramble and learn quickly. But as you mentioned, people are softer nowadays. Like, that just would not happen anymore. He's in New York. I'm his buddy. I'm like, you just Slack me, message me, whenever you want. It doesn't matter if it's 10 o'clock my time. I don't care. I'll answer your Slack. He knows who I am. He's not going to be like particularly weird. I said, there might be a slight delay, but basically, I'm there for him like pretty much the whole time. And I also, any questions, anything, no question is stupid. Don't say you have any naive questions. You're not naive. You're a new person, and he's not coming from our space, right? So I'm like, you're about to like defy a bit, and it's a very fast-paced, pre-manical place to work, and which is good because we're a very successful company, but we're successful for a reason. It's like kind of achieving results, etc. And you've just started. Take your time. Go to the LMS. Do these modules. You've got a whole onboarding program. Don't try and please too many people at once at the same time. Because he's like, oh, do you need help with that? Perhaps I can take that off your plate. I'm like, no, stop. You're going to be taking a lot of stuff off my plate. Don't worry, that's why you're here. Like, for now, just take your time. It's really important. If you're not understanding the basics of like what we're doing, your work just won't be effective. So I think that's the big difference. I never had that.
Okay, so I think that's an important point. And because you've, over your 10 years of being here and in previous companies, you've obviously come into contact with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I think giving new staff that space to learn and grow and make mistakes is really important.
Yes.
Because especially when you compare that to the startup world, mm-hmm. where it's like, a million miles an hour, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to do it yesterday. It's a hard environment to operate in.
Yep.
So giving the new staff the space to just grow and develop and feel comfortable, is that something when you're recruiting people, mm-hmm. you're obviously looking for level of initiative, hard working. Like, what are your minimum requirements for a new staff member joining your team?
Okay. As I mentioned, I just want to be like transparent here as well. I actually don't have a team. He's going to be working like with me.
No, but you had before.
I had a team, right? Sorry. I just want to like, I think this just goes out to a simple team. I really, really like appreciate not being micromanaged myself as well. The idea is, if you're, we're all kind of like grown adults, I wouldn't want to have to have the person just look over his shoulder the whole time. As a manager, first of all, you've got to deal with your own management and board decisions and whatever. You have a lot of pressure from above, and to be a good manager, you're meant to be deflecting that and not pushing that down to your employees and micromanaging them and asking them why they haven't done this, why they haven't done that. It's more like, so being able to work independently. That was one of the first things I was looking for. And I don't want to use too many cliche words about being a self-starter and all that stuff, but I could see from the CV, like, I would call it the references, but for me the references were just kind of like a given. I never called up a reference and went, oh, that person, don't hire them. I was a fairly good judge of character. We didn't have too many rounds of interviews. It was, obviously they were filtered out to start with by HR. They came to me. I gave them the first initial interview to see whether they were put in this at the time. And other qualities I was looking for, it sounds weird, but I was looking at the body language, I was looking at the eye contact, I was looking to see, and the one thing I did ask for all of them, I just give me some samples of your work. This is a world of training, so you've developed training before, haven't you? Yeah. So that really gave me the biggest clue that I could find, because there's no way. Give them an exam and tell them to write an exam for 10 minutes or whatever it is. It's not really going to help me understand if they can do the job or not. So also samples, references, and of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, just making sure that they can work independently, and I don't need to hold down. Of course, I'm there to answer questions and manage them and task prioritization, all that stuff. But that was basically it.
Okay.
That's okay.
Some challenges of managing the staff then. Let's say, what was your biggest challenge? And again, you don't need to name any.
There's no names. No, it was good. I actually don't think I ever fired anyone. Actually, people left because of me. No, I definitely didn't fire anyone. You can skip that bit out as well. No, I put people leave naturally to go to different jobs or whatever it was.
Do you deal with it in a professional way, or you took it personally?
No. Well, if you take anything personally in high tech, in this the world that we live in, you're not going to last long anyway. All right. Definitely never take anything personally. I'm not saying have a thick skin, but just realize it's not you, it's them. Okay. I feel like I'm giving a bit of a therapy session here, but I was like, good for you, go for it. I'm very happy for you, and they all went to different jobs, and some of them are doing really well nowadays. But just the challenges. Sometimes there's a personality clash, and that happens the whole time. Whether it's for management that you're clashing with them, or the other way around. I manage a team of 4 people, 4 completely different people who didn't know each other beforehand, and then there's me, and we're not always going to agree on everything. There's some disagreements, and sometimes people do things personally, and sometimes it gets heated. So that's always a challenging situation. And the most challenging situation I had was I did have one of my employees go over my head to my manager, which wasn't the best situation to be in. Obviously, we sat down with them, and I was like, appreciate and here, just if you've got something to say to me, just be an adult, be an adult. I didn't kind of say it like that.
Yeah.
And it was probably the most difficult discussion I've ever had with any employee. Actually, it was that particular person.
Was your manager in the room as well?
No. It was just that person and me. It was I was actually almost a little bit emotional because I kind of felt like I wasn't treated fairly, and I was a manager. I think I shouldn't be in this position. I felt bad.
So I don't want you to go into details because for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
What did you learn from that?
I learned from that is what I realised was I wasn't listening enough
to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was missing. Well, turns out I was missing some really big red flags. I was like, so for them, just my awareness. Especially I had a team of 4, so I've always kind of been managing all 4 of them equally, of course. There's no favoritisms, and I just was missing a lot of signs that weren't happy. Also, weren't happy with my management style, which is fine. I'm not going to please everyone. Okay, so just weren't happy with the way I was handling certain things, but again, it would be nice if that person had let me know about that, but without having to go to my manager. But honestly, once you do that, also my manager realised, I'd been with my manager for a while, not the best move on their part either. I'd never fired them, I wasn't going to fire them. We resolved the situation, but definitely not a good look.
What change did you make moving forward based on that experience, like with the self-reflection and.
I'd love to make a joke now, but maybe we'll say in the part of the podcast. So what changes did I make? Well, very quickly came to realise that it's not going to work in that position. Well, I could not manage this person anymore. That it was just got to the stage where it wasn't working. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work out. I'm sure many people listening to this podcast have gone through the same type of thing. And lucky enough, I worked in a company that we managed to push positions into a different position within the organisation, and everything worked out. They were happy, I was happy, and it was all good. There was no tension, but sometimes these things just don't work out. So again, just to be an adult and not.
So that was somebody from your team. Have you ever experienced it being like a staff member, somebody above, like more senior than you, where it's just a clash, there's issues?
Funny you mention that. Yes, not in Tufin. So Tufin, great company, again another plug. But previous company, which will definitely remain unnamed, I was busy doing my training thing, and after training long, and I just saw an internal job board. I still forgot the name of that position, by the way. But I just wanted a really interesting standing position to be a sales enablement leader or whatever it was at the time. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I could, and I looked at the job description on the board. And I'm like, I can do a lot of that stuff. I speak to customers. I know the product pretty well, and it'd be really interesting to take training to the world of enablement. Very, very similar world. I'm like, so I applied for the position, and the person at the time said, yeah, why not? We'll go for it. It was such a simple, easy transition, and off I went. And first day, she was like, okay, I've got this Excel sheet I want you to edit. I'm like, okay, I can do Excel editing. Give it to me. A week later, a month later, I was still doing Excel sheets. I'm like, this is absolutely horrendous. What just happened to my life? I went from doing, what I know best, and I was really maturing in a lot of training and kind of like, sorry, I wouldn't say maturing, but like becoming more senior, etc. And all of a sudden, I'm like sitting there on Excel for like days on end, just editing Excel sheets, and like had to kind of like, it was basically measuring how the salespeople were doing, and then making sure they had the right tools. That was the enablement. It wasn't real enablement as we might think about it today. So I just went to it directly. It's not working. I'm not doing this anymore. And it was pretty quick. It was only maybe a couple of months, and I'm like, I want to go back to what I've been before. It was all within the same company. So I pretty much went groveling back to my boss. I was like, please take me back. And he was like, fine. But they hadn't found anyone to replace me. So I really lucked out. It could have been really bad. They could have said, no, we've got someone to replace you, you don't have to be out. So I kind of lucked out in that situation. But what did I learn from that? Well, you never know. It's like the risk situation. I went for something that I wasn't familiar with, but I was within the same company still. So I thought, how bad can, what's the worst that could happen? And yeah, it was, I don't know. I can't actually think of like any, I just wasn't expecting it. Lesson learned, maybe ask some detailed questions about the job before you take it. I rushed into it pretty quickly. It all happened like within a week. And if I just ask, so what's the expectations of like my day-to-day job, like what you foresee me doing, and she might go, well, you know what? Actually, we have a lot of statistics going on, and you're going to need to be editing lots of Excels. I might have thought maybe I won't do that. So and if you were going for like a outside, if you're coming, from the outside, you probably would ask some questions about like what is my role here. But because it was internal, I was like took things for granted because I've already been working in the company for a bit, and I was like, okay, I'm just moving to a different role. But
yes. No, I think that's really important.
Bit of a shocker. Yeah.
One thing that I do when I'm recruiting a new member of staff, I'll obviously have a couple of rounds of interviews with them, and then I'll arrange for that potential candidate to have a meeting with the rest of the team. I will not be there.
Yeah.
And I sit and I tell both sides, my team and this potential staff member, both have to be 100% honest. You have to tell them what it's like to work as part of my team. You have to, am I a decent person
so I
to
have
work
never,
for? Am I honest?
It's really good. So you're saying everything which didn't happen. I'd never worked for this person before. I had no idea what, and they were the only person I met. There was one interview. It was literally like a discussion. I couldn't. Do you want to work for me? I'm like, okay, I'll do it. It was so quick, and be able, obviously what you're saying now makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. So training and with a team of 4 or 5,
Yeah.
and then you transitioned to product marketing. How did that come about?
So that is funny you asked that question because the person who I'm helping with onboarding this week in our team, he's content marketing manager now for the team. Obviously, it was almost 6 years into Tufin, maybe just over 6 years, and I trained hundreds of courses. The LMS was alive and kicking with like thousands of users, and the whole team underneath me, also in the States at this point and here. And kind of like my knowledge of the product was great, and the fact that I was able to explain what we do to customers, market what we do to customers in a way. They obviously looked at the training, you could see some marketing, and I did work with marketing a little bit. I mean, you have to, not just in terms of like the branding and how pretty it looks, but also like the messaging does come from marketing. We didn't just make the stuff up. Like we have to kind of, especially in the introduction courses, like, oh, welcome to Tufin. Tufin is blah blah blah. So we were working with marketing to an extent. So I kind of was familiar with some people in marketing, and I arranged a meeting with VP marketing. It was all kind of very friendly. But I didn't make the same mistake I made in another company. I was like, it was a meeting, not an interview, and it was like really early stage. And I'm like, I'm really interested in this position you're going for product marketing. Obviously, I had no experience, but I can provide you with years of experience in Tufin and the ability to kind of like, this is what we spoke about before in training, the ability to kind of like flip a very technical, complex product into a human language model for our customers and prospects, whatever. And she really liked the sound of it, and I'm like, so I do have potential, but again, like, you'd have to kind of like teach me product marketing. I mean, I kind of get it. It's not like complete rocket science. I basically go to market the product and enable sales and enable our customers kind of to understand what we do. That's kind of what I was thinking at the time. Wow, what a change. So basically, fast forward, I had a bunch of interviews with who was going to be my boss at the time. It did take a while. It wasn't like a week like the last one. This took a couple of months, and they had other candidates. So on their side, they also took a chance. They're like, we're going to take a chance with you. You obviously have enough of the product knowledge. We don't have to train you up. As a lot of the candidates they had, they were product marketers. It's kind of the balance.
So they had the marketing.
Yeah, but Tufin we're in a very niche industry. Okay, there's only like us and 2 others out there. In terms of competition, who do exactly the same as us, right?
Yeah.
And so we both kind of took a chance. Again, I was leaving the world, and why was I kind of like interested in it? Apart from that, it looks interesting. I'd also reached the top of what I considered at the time, and still do maybe, of training. I was like director of training. We had, we had a great. The whole mechanism was working. We were developing. We were delivering. It was successful. Our KPIs were like great in the training world.
Who set those KPIs?
I did, of course. I wanted to look good, didn't I? No, but no, the manager, everyone. We set. It's a group decision of like, we want this many courses. This is the level of feedback that we want, and how many people. At the time, training wasn't selling anything, but we did want to make sure that the customers were training on those courses it was kind of customer retention and sticky management, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Everything was working great. I was like, I think I was done. I was like, do I leave Tufin now? Do I kind of look for a new job? I don't really want to. I'm comfortable here. I'm comfortable. It was great. Over 6 years in the same company, it was fantastic. Almost approaching my 7 years at NICE. I was like, got to take my 7-year record back to running. I've got to get past. I'm so close. So then this position, all right, we took the dive, we took the plunge, and off we went. Within a month, they put me in pragmatic marketing training. I think that's what it's called. There's 2 types of like product marketing courses in America. I think there's product marketing alliance and pragmatic marketing. When I was training, it's black and white. This is what the product does, right? There's A, B, C. There's no kind of like marketing it in a way like the potential of the product. You're not selling the product to anyone. In the world of marketing, like you are selling a story. In the world of training, you're not selling a story. Okay, you're just saying what it does. So marketing gives you a lot more a broader perception of the product. Same product, the same things, but also like we're selling a solution to solve customers' issues, and marketing, how are we going to create a campaign which is going to incentivize customers to like onboard to Tufin? Crazy, same product, but like, wow. It kind of still does blow my mind a little bit about how you can work with the same company and have such a different...
In a professional sense,
Yeah.
who motivates you? Who's inspired you?
I would say my previous boss, unfortunately, just left Tufin to pursue his own coaching company.
Okay.
I wish him like most success, of course.
I was like 75
Oh,
kilometers
we're both miserable.
into a 100-kilometer run,
Oh yeah.
and we stopped. We passed each other. And we stopped in the middle of this muddy field.
Yeah.
Talked for 20 seconds, and then you went that way, and I went that way.
Yeah.
How do you switch off from everything here in a professional sense?
So I can add a fourth one into things I've learned. Switch off. If you're taking your work home with you, or if you can't shut down that figurative laptop of yours, or mute your Slack messages, your notifications, you're going to burn out. Like, wow, it's so important, and I really am thankful, which I'm sure you are as well, for like my hobby, which is running. But it doesn't need to be running. It could be flamenco dancing. Okay, it doesn't really matter what it is. It's really important to be able to go and switch off. Watching TV is also a hobby. Okay, and to disconnect from work and just clear your mind. Because first of all, it's important to kind of like relax your own body, but also when you do get back to work and you get back in, you'll be more fresh. And believe it or not, even though you might switch off, you could have like an inspiration. It's happened to me on runs. I'd be in the middle of running, all of a sudden I'm thinking about work. I'm like, oh, I have no idea what to do. It's like it just comes to you. So even though I'm not actively was thinking about work, it does happen. So even if I switch off, sometimes I do get inspired.
Yeah.
And so how's running helped me? Are you about to ask that question?
Well, you sort of just answered.
I kind of answered it. It's
Yeah.
just and people
Share
like
meditation.
and people. Oh, I can ask you. Do you ever listen to music when you're running?
I used to, not anymore,
Why do you not listen to music when you're running?
because it just interfered with my thinking. And, yeah,
Exactly.
I like
There
the
you
just
are.
peace and quiet.
I mean, I know exactly. So, and where are you running to?
I think when you're running 100 kilometers, you're just running. You don't stop.
I can't believe I never got to triple digits.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Last question,
Yep.
and I'm asking everybody the same last question.
Mhm.
So I love this. I love the phrase "failure is a bruise, not a tattoo."
Mhm.
Talk through an example of that where you came out the other end having developed. You've learned from it. You've learned from the experience, and you've come out feeling that you're a stronger, better professional worker for it.
Again, disclaimer: no company is being mentioned here. But I was working at a company once, and right, I'm going to try and say this in the most politically correct way, especially if we want a podcast. So we're going to keep the language clean. But I ended up with the boss at one point. I gelled pretty quickly, actually. Not like, so I've had two bad experiences of my career. Once with like a very short, the 2-month stint in enablement. But this was something a little bit different. So, but in that case, I just didn't gel with that boss at all. It was just not working out. This one, we've gotten like a house on fire. Absolutely fantastic. Like, any hands on my feet here. Brilliant. Working along nicely. Traveled abroad together to a conference. Everything was great. Came back and had my quarterly check-in or whatever it was, maybe half-yearly check-in at the company. Got really fantastic grades. I'm like, oh sweet, everything is going according to plan. Then a week later, I was put on what's known as a performance improvement plan, a PIP. I didn't even know what that was.
What, like probation?
So basically, it's kind of like in 90+% of the cases, it's like you're about to be fired, but we're giving you like a little chance to prove yourself. But normally, it's kind of a more of a formality thing. It's almost like in Israel, like having a hearing, what they call a hearing.
Yeah.
Then you're going like that means that you're done. But this is one step a little bit before, and like we're going to put you on this plan. We're going to give you like a list of tasks to do, and so then the higher managers, the management will see it, and the point will be proven that you're not fit to work in this company. I was like in shock.
And this came out of nowhere.
for me it did. Yeah, obviously didn't really get into science.
Yeah.
A bit of a running theme here.
Yeah.
But like, no, there were no signs. I literally the week before I'd had the check-in. It was black and white. HR. I went straight to HR. I'm like, I don't get it. Look at this amazing report I just got. It was literally that glowing report of my work. How is this happening to me? What's going on? And they were literally like, I don't know. I'm like, well, it doesn't really inspire me with confidence. I'm like, what's going on here? And I went to a couple of other colleagues at the time. I started looking up what performance improvement plan was. Eventually, I didn't know anything. I was in such shock. I was like literally shaking. I was like, my whole career, I was like, I started like wrapping my CV, getting it ready. I was like, okay, I've got to, that's it, done. In the meantime, I got this kind of like A4 piece of paper, and like, okay, can you just do ABC? These are your tasks. And I looked at them, and I'm like, that's what I've been doing the whole time. I'm like, fine. So I did these tasks on this piece of paper, and I submitted it. Obviously, made sure to CC like a bunch of other people, not just the boss at the time, to make sure everyone's. And because I was a bit kind of skeptical, like something just seemed off, as hopefully you're getting from this. And I'm trying to be as objective as possible, even though I was in the situation. I'm like, it just didn't seem right. So I made sure everyone knew. And a week later, like the senior manager comes and says, and looks at what you submitted. It seemed fine. Like,
wait, the manager of your manager?
Yeah, the manager came, contacted me directly, and I hadn't had much contact with that person until now, and said, just carry on, fine, don't worry about it. Like, you've gone through it. And HR were in shock. They're like, wow. I said 90%. They're like, almost never happens. Like, once you get this, like, normally you're done. Like, well done, and carry on working. And I felt a little bit uncomfortable because I'm still reporting to this person who basically told me I wasn't up to scratch.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's going on here? 2 weeks later, she was gone. So they realized that the problem that was happening wasn't to do with me, it was to do with 2 weeks later they were gone. And that was basically the end of that story.
So what did you learn about that?
Well, I can say this is just like, be true to yourself. Like, I was, as I said, transparent, and I like to think I'm a fairly trustworthy kind of like human being. You know, if you and me speak to each other, we're assuming that we're not telling any half truths or lies, or whatever it might be. Like we're having like a regular adult conversation. So I kind of assuming that most of our conversation, maybe I'm a little bit naive in that respect, but it was within the same work environment. It was my manager. Like we got on together really well. So I was assuming that everything was kind of like above board, and I could trust the person. And so I learned was definitely be true to yourself. Go with your instincts. As I said, I got through to HR, spoke to colleagues, and so everyone was aware of the situation. And as I said, I knew something was just a bit off. It's like, why? It just didn't seem right. And thank goodness my instincts were actually correct in this situation. Obviously, I'm not happy to see anyone go, but it was pretty brutal what happened. It was an American employee. So in America, when you get let go, you get let go. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no kind of grace period there. So lesson learned was just go with the instincts, and I'd even say that if I got let go myself, I knew I did the right thing, and the fact that even before they were let go, the manager contacted me and said, like, I knew that I'd been vindicated somehow or other. So even if I had been let go still after that, I knew I'd done the right thing. So
I think that's a great story to finish.
thanks for that story.
Thank you for your time.
You're
Good luck
welcome.
for the marathon tomorrow.
Oh, thanks very much.